G'day, John Canny here. Today I thought we'd talk about going to the Outback for the first time. So you've heard about the Outback, you've always thought, gee, I'd love to do that, that'd be a real adventure. And you know what, you're absolutely right, it is a real adventure and I strongly encourage you to do it. But you're going to have a lot of questions. I know that I did, 15 odd years ago when I first went on my first trip to the Outback. Done quite a few since then and learned quite a lot of lessons. So I'm going to give you my thoughts on going to the Outback and how that you can do that safely and have a lot of fun. At the end of this video, I'm going to show you what I believe you must take with you to ensure that you're safe in the Outback. Okay? Where are you going to go? What are you going to do? Well, the first thing is, you can see a lot of this country and a lot of Outback Australia just on travelling on sealed roads. More and more of our roads in the Outback are becoming sealed, and sealed roads means that you can travel in just about any vehicle, ordinary sedan. You can be towing a big caravan that's not an off-road caravan. And if you've got one of those, you will be sticking to the sealed roads. I want to talk a bit more about those who want to stray off those main sealed roads and get onto some of those Outback tracks that are going to provide a lot of interest, a lot of adventure and a chance to really see remote and Outback Australia. Okay, so what are you going to do? Well, you got to plan your trip. Grab yourself a map book, something like this, which you're going to be taking with you when you go, or maps like this, you know. Sit down at the kitchen table, work out where you think you want to go. Now, my strong advice is to stick to the main tracks, especially on your first trip. So what's the first thing that you've got to think about? And that's the vehicle that's going to take you on these tracks. What do you need? Well, if you're getting off the main sealed roads, you're going to need either an SUV or a 4x4. This Ranger ute that I'm sitting on is a 4x4, but I travelled my first few trips to the Outback in a Subaru Forester. So some of those smaller all-wheel drive SUVs are quite capable of going on a lot of these Outback tracks. The one thing, the most important thing though, is tyres. So it doesn't matter what car you've got or what vehicle you've got, if you've got the wrong tyres on there, you could get yourself into trouble. And hey, I put my hand up, I got into trouble on some of my earlier trips. So you need the right tyres. Now, what are the right tyres? Well, here's a really good video somewhere floating around on here. Check that out. Your SUV, your 4x4 is likely to have come out of the showroom with standard highway terrain tyres. But in the bush, in the Outback, on these rough, corrugated, stony roads, they puncture very easily because they're not designed for that purpose. They're designed to be comfortable and grip the road well on sealed roads. So you need those all-terrain tyres. They will reduce your chance of getting a puncture. They won't eliminate it, there's still a possibility. Okay, so one other thing you need to think about is letting your tyre pressures down when you're on unmade, rough or corrugated roads. Now this will do two things. Firstly, it will protect your tyres from punctures a little bit because obviously it gives more give in the tyre and therefore less chance of sharp stones and sticks puncturing your tyres, but it also makes your ride a lot more comfortable. So it's really important to drop those tyre pressures on those rough roads or corrugated roads. How much do you drop them down? That's the next question. Well, there's lots of thoughts on different tyre pressures for different circumstances when you're Outback. But as a bit of a rule of thumb, if you're running about 38, 40 pounds in your tyres, you might want to drop them down to 28. 28's a good number to start. So that'll give you a more comfortable ride and protect your tyres a bit. There's a whole lot of scope for letting your tyres right down much lower if you're on sand or and you're bogged and things like that, but that's a different story. So you let your tyres down, but you've got to pump them back up. So you're going to need to carry a compressor with you, which is really a good idea anyway. So a compressor, you don't need the most expensive. You can get some really good compressors from these bulk stores or super cheaps or whatever they call themselves. For, you know, $100, $120 on special. that will do the job adequately. So when you get back onto the sealed roads, and you're more than 40 or 50 kilometres on sealed roads, you want to pop those tyres back up to their normal pressure of about 38, 40 or whatever you normally run your tyres on. Otherwise they'll start to get too hot. So that's why you need the compressor. So you need a good tyre gauge as well, so you know whether you're up or down. I wouldn't rely on the ones that come with the pumps, they're not that good. Just buy yourself a decent tyre pressure gauge, because you should be checking your tyres regularly anyway. So that's something else you've got to take on board with you when you go. But you'll appreciate getting those tyre pressures down when you're on those corrugated roads. So you don't want worn tyres either, you don't want tyres that are 2/3 gone or anything like that. It can also be a good idea to carry a second spare. Oh my God, when am I going to get a second spare? What's that going to cost? You know, you might have to go and buy a rim that suits your car and get another tyre put on it, and you might have to carry it on a roof rack. Okay, if you haven't got a trailer or a camper van or something that you can put it in or on. But the thing about that is, if you do get a flat out there, it can be a nervous ride until you get that repaired, because you know if you get another flat, you're stuck. So the second one is good insurance, and I tell you what, the cost of someone bringing you a tyre out in the outback is a very expensive business. So the cost of a spare is well and truly worth it. So you've got the tyres, right? You've got the right vehicle. You must have it serviced and checked over by a competent mechanic ready for the outback. Take a few basic tools with you, and I've got a video which talks about all the bits and pieces that I think are a really good idea to take. You're not going to be pulling your car apart on the side of the road. There's a limited number of spares that you might want to think about taking, and there's not many. If you've got all your belts checked and things like that, so you've got the car serviced, you've got your good tyres now on it, you've got your roof rack with your spare wheel on it, maybe, hopefully, it's a good idea. And the other thing you need to think about is carrying a little bit of additional fuel. There are many cases where there are long distances between fuel stops. And you might even get to a fuel stop and find they're not open or don't have any fuel. So it's a good idea, if you can, to carry a bit of additional fuel. Now this can be a problem. If you've got an SUV, you're not going to be carrying fuel inside your vehicle. That's a no-no, okay? So if you've got a trailer or a camper van or something like that where you can put a jerry can rack, you can carry fuel easily. But otherwise you might need to put a jerry can up on a roof rack. Make sure of two things. Make sure that it's properly secured, and make sure that you've got a good quality jerry can. None of these cheap plastic things that blow up and lids fall off and all that. Good quality steel jerry can, in my opinion. And look, if you think you might be concerned about lifting a 20-litre jerry can up and down off the roof, get a couple of 10-litre ones. What next? Well, you need a UHF radio, or a CB radio as they're sometimes called. You need a radio to be able to communicate with other vehicles in the outback, particularly large trucks and road trains. So if you're travelling along a track and you come upon a road train in front of you, all you're going to see is a massive cloud of dust. Okay, so how can you possibly get around that? You can't. So what you need to do is have your CB radio and talk to the truck driver. You know, we're on channel 40 out there in the outback in Australia. Call him up, say, "G'day mate, you could let me know when you're ready that it might be safe for me to get past you." And look, all of these guys and girls that are driving those trucks in the outback, I've never found one that hasn't been polite and helpful and concerned for your safety and their safety. They're happy to say, "Look, I'll let you know when it's ready to pass," and then they move over and into the dust side themselves and they say, "Okay, clear to pass." Otherwise you can't get past because you can't see, and not only that, they don't know you're there because they can't see through dust either. So essential, you don't need a built-in one in your car. Go and buy a handheld one. Get them at any of the auto stores or electrical stores, but get a 5-watter. Don't muck around with a 1-watt or 2-watter. 5-watter, that'll be more than adequate. It's also a bit of a safety device that you can use to call up other vehicles if you need to. Obviously, that's really important. So, look, as a minimum, and you know, there's a lot of different opinions on this, but as a minimum, you want to be thinking about, 5 to 7 litres per person, and don't forget the dog, okay? And that's for you know, drinking and a bit of washing and cooking and things like that. And 20 litres of emergency water somewhere. Okay, now that might even be in a jerry can, water jerry can up on the roof with the other bits and pieces that you've got. And look, another thing that I tend to do is, even when I've done all that, I still buy a couple of litre bottles of water from the supermarket and shove them under the front seat, never to be known about, just in case. Okay, so you need water. The other thing you might want to consider is food. It's expensive and hard to buy food out there, so it depends on what sort of gear you've got. If you've got a camper trailer with a fridge, or a caravan with a fridge, it's a whole different kettle of fish. If you've got an ice box, maybe you need to pack tin food and dehydrated foods and things like that. But always have a bit of spare in case you get stuck for a few days. You don't want to be hungry. You're probably not going to die of hunger for a couple of days, but you're not going to feel too happy. So packed away the dehydrated, canned, or if you're lucky enough to be able to have a refrigerator, and even if you've got a refrigerator, camping refrigerator or an ice box, yeah, a couple of extra canned tins of food is a good idea. But where are you going to camp? Now, again, depending on what you are, whether you have swags or tents or camper vans or caravans, plenty of publications around. Books like this, here's one from Queensland, you know, ideal. They've got all the camp spots all around the country that you can plan and work out where you're going to. You can also bush camp if you can find a nice quiet spot by the side of the road, off the road. Make sure, as I said earlier, that you've got paper maps. Map book like this is ideal. Paper maps like this, really important. You might say, well, I've got a GPS system, I've downloaded it onto my iPad and I've got it on my phone and all that. Great. Some they're good, some better than others, but you need a backup, okay? If something did go wrong, you lost all your power, you're stuck out there longer than you think because of weather or whatever, make sure you've got paper maps as well. Now, speaking of stuck out there, one of the things that can be an issue is the weather. So you need to keep an eye on the weather, okay? Because if it rains, often roads are closed. Now, you can be stuck in an outback town or somewhere for a few days if they close the roads. They close the roads because you can easily get bogged once they get wet, and secondly, you wreck the road on them as well. So if a road's closed, it's a no-go. So don't even think about attempting that. They get very cross about that. So just keep that in mind. Keep an eye on the weather. You know, this is an adventure that you're going to have a hell of a lot of fun. There's all sorts of interesting things going to crop up along the way and places to see, but you need to plan. Again, I really recommend you do this. It's not necessarily a dangerous thing to do any more than traveling anywhere. But get yourself one of these. It's called a Zoleo. It is a satellite communication device. So it's got an emergency SOS button that if you press that button, it will alert emergency services no matter where you are in the outback. Don't rely on your phone because you probably won't have phone signal in most of the outback. But this, if you're in an emergency situation and you press that button, you'll get a response from emergency services. It's monitored 24 hours a day. So that's what it's like, these EPIRBs and things that, you know, they have out in boats and things. But the other thing about this little beauty is that you can then send messages to the emergency services about what your situation is, okay? You can also send messages to family and friends, or anybody you like for that matter. And you can you can receive emails as well. So it's a little beauty. And it does one more thing. You can leave a breadcrumb trail of where you are, and it sends a signal every hour or whatever time frame you set, back to people that you nominate of where your location is. So they keep track of you, and it can be so much fun for people, you know, family members following and seeing where you are in the outback, but it's also a great safety feature because you've got people who care about you who know exactly where you are at any one time. So about $320, $350, subscription of about $30 a month, but you only have to pay it when you're going away, and you can stop it and start it and still maintain one of these. I've got a video at the end there, goes into a bit more detail about what these are and how they work, worth watching and worth taking. Now, the one proviso with all this, and something that many of us fail to think about, and that's what's your vehicle capable of carrying. Now, I've talked about carrying a spare tyre on the roof and carrying spare fuel and making sure you've got plenty of water, and you've got the dog and you've got the kids and you've got your partner sitting next to you. How much weight can you carry in your car? Now, that's something that's really important, because you don't want to be overloading your vehicle. Okay, so you need to know what the gross vehicle mass, or the GVM, of your vehicle is, and that's the maximum amount that it can weigh when it's fully loaded with people and cargo. Now, you can go to your manual, and who reads all of this? Not many of us. And I can tell you, going through the Ford Ranger manual, I can't find it in there. So you've got to either go to the dealer, or sometimes Ford or the car manufacturers have that information on the internet. But you need to make sure that you're not overloading your vehicle. And when I mentioned earlier that you can go in smaller SUVs and things like that, you can. But you've also got to then think, well, I can't carry as much water, I can't carry as much fuel, I can't, maybe, depending. So make sure you consider those weight factors. Spare tyre's heavy. 20 litres of water is 20 kilograms, So if you're towing a vehicle, you've got to consider the overall weight of your vehicle and whatever you're towing. The gross combined mass, the GCM, okay? Because there will also be a specified limit for your vehicle as to what that gross combined mass can be. So while it might say you can tow, 2 tonne or 3.5 tonne or whatever it is, that's fine, but you can't have a gross combined mass that's the weight of your vehicle, everybody in it, everything that's in your car and your trailer, more than that figure, whatever it might be for your vehicle. So that's something else you've got to check out. These are really important, and there's lots of police checking these along the road and things like that, because it's so dangerous to be having your vehicle overloaded, so be aware of that. Another thing, if you've got a roof rack, check the capacity of your roof and the capacity of the roof rack, and don't forget the weight of the roof rack itself, okay? So all these little things, you've got to do a bit of research and think about them as well. So again, totally recommend this. What an adventure, do it! Don't just think about it, do it. And I'm sure you'll enjoy it and have a lot of fun. So I hope this video, I know it's only the basics, but it's for those who have been thinking about it but just a bit apprehensive. So please subscribe to my channel. I really would appreciate if you do that, and I've got other interesting videos on there about the Outback or trips that I might have taken, and there'll be more to come, especially next year. Thanks for watching, and have a great trip, and I'll talk to you again soon.